My name is Dave Hollenbach, the host of From Embers to Excellence. My goal is to explore the many facets of leadership from the perspectives of some amazing people. In addition to leadership, I like to discuss mental health, PTSD, and overcoming adversity. If you have a favorite episode, I would love to hear about it. Message me through social media or my website, and I will share some free tools to help you achieve your goals. Please like, subscribe, and leave a review. If you haven't purchased your copy of my book, Fireproof, please grab a copy today. Thanks for listening. Today, I'm speaking with Kevin Kepple. Kevin hosts the Unlock Your Freedom podcast, which is ranked in the top 5% of all podcasts globally. He is a Gallup-certified Strengths Coach who has helped thousands of professionals look inside themselves to find clarity, discover what they love, and live a life of freedom. Through weekly episodes, Kevin provides step-by-step training, coaching, and accountability to leaders who want to take their life and business to the next level. I've been a guest on his show, which led to a post-interview conversation that then led to me signing up to be a part of his mastermind group. He doesn't just talk the talk. Kevin walks the walk that so many of us want to. I have been fortunate to meet people from all over the world that are doing some amazing things. Kevin is one of those people, and he has impacted me in some incredible ways. I'm so grateful to have him on the show to share with all of us. So, Kevin, thank you so much for agreeing to come on and have this conversation with me.
Yeah, man, it's my pleasure, Dave. Like, what a cool intro. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Well, I always like to start off with, getting some background on the guest to try and set the stage for what has developed your passions. So, where were you born and raised, and who were some of your early influences?
Yeah, man, what a great question. I was actually born in Dallas, and I live, I think, 2 miles from the hospital I was born in. I've made it a little farther out, but I've returned because, man, Dallas is home. My friends and my family are here, and it's really great. And it's super central, so I can get everywhere quick because I love to travel. And I spent most of my life here, a little stint in Chicago, but Dallas is great, man. Texas, full of beautiful people, just like everywhere else in the U.S. And I pretty storied past, just like everybody else, right? Like it wasn't like a smooth journey by any means, but I grew up and went to college, had no idea what I wanted to do. It's like I'll sign up for business classes because I've heard of business, and I went to college. I went to college and took my sweet time, and went long enough to be an attorney, but I'm not an attorney, and or a doctor. And I got out. I still didn't know what I wanted to do, and I worked in the hospitality industry for a few years. I really enjoyed that, but that worked until it didn't. So I switched over to different professional sales type roles, and one of the challenges I kept bumping up against in the roles was I just wasn't fulfilled. And, like no matter how much winning or not winning I was doing, there's just something was missing. And I knew I wanted more. I just had no idea how to get to more or what it even looked like. And fortunately, I had the wherewithal, or somebody did, who pointed me in the right direction to hire a coach, and, a business coach. And gosh, I worked with some really great ones. And I remember I had a guy named Robert. He was awesome. He was in Secret Service for about 30 years almost. And Robert had a way of looking right through you when you weren't being as straightforward as you could, so to speak. And not that I was lying to him or anything, but I didn't even know what my truth really was. And I was just like, are you like, what do you like about your job? And I was like, I love all these things. And he's like, dude, I don't even think you like it, man. It's like, you're not even, like your tone, your body language. And long story short, he's like, man, I just think you'd be so much happier. Like, it sounds like because I was director of sales at the time, and I love coaching and mentoring and helping people just be more of like whatever it is that makes them, special and unique, and using that to help them go get everything they want and serve people at really high levels. And, that sounds so simple now that I say it, but I had no idea that's what I wanted then. And, yeah, he really got me to let go of, needing to have things be a certain way for me to be okay, and really just going out and create my own path forward. And really, really grateful for him and his influence and all the other great coaches and leaders I've had. And so, long story short, that's kind of how I got to what I do today.
Yeah, in quite a few of our conversations, you talk about, your relationship with your mom and your dad and your brother, and the influence that they've had on you. And um, one thing that's pretty cool, I have two stepbrothers. I've got a couple of younger brothers. One of them passed away in 2010, and I think about the relationships that I've had with them throughout the years and how they've evolved. And when I hear you talk about your brother, it's very much like, I think, the stereotypical brother relationship, where, and you're younger, right? You're the younger
Yeah,
of the two. Uh,
definitely the younger brother. But yeah, such a great point, and I totally missed those people. My mom, my brother, my dad, my stepdad, like, they're all phenomenal influences, in my life, and they still are. I actually saw my dad passed away about 15 years ago, but my mom, my stepdad, my brother, I was at dinner with them and, one of my nieces last night, and I was just like, "Man, they're such good people," and it's really cool that, like, that's the people I got to be around, and, like, what a gift, to have people that I still look up to get to just go to on a regular basis, and I learned so many different things the same way, but different from each of them. Like, kindness is a value they all share, but the dedication to just being a good person for other people is probably one of the coolest things they all do, and really intentionally, and in some of the similar ways and some of the different ways. And I think they all have a lot of grace too. Like, they're very, forgiving, especially of me. Like, I like to do things the hard way multiple times before I go the easy way in some cases. And there's no judgment there. And it's just really cool to have a safe place like that when people that you look up to. And, my older brother, like, you've heard me tell stories of him, and it's like, I'm always, like, fascinated, like, how are you born so put together? Like, he had it all figured out. Like, we're 2.5 years apart, but I felt like we were, like, generations apart. Like, he just, like, just has always been, like, very wise and mature and, like, just good at things. And, like, I'm just like, "Man, you skipped childhood, and we're just, like, a full-formed adult." And, like, that's amazing, but pretty far removed from me. I was a much more, cram the square peg through the round hole and get it stuck for a while before I, moved easily down the road, so to speak.
One thing that is is something that I like to ask questions about when I know somebody was involved with team sports when they were growing up, and they have what seems like a natural ability to lead, but those qualities that those leadership qualities that you now embody, they were most certainly developed through your time uh, playing team sports, through being mentored by your brother, your father, and the different coaches that you've had. Um, I I'm wondering if you can relate some of your baseball experiences to how you still operate today.
Sure. I can serve as a warning sign for many people with my stories. Um, I think one of the best stories from when I was, a little Kevin, my friends and I still laugh about this. And, like, gosh, I can't remember how old I was. I must have been in, like, third or fourth grade, however old you are at that time. But I still remember I was, like, in my living room. I laid on my stomach playing Nintendo with the AB controller, the old school 80s, right? I played ice hockey. It was just called ice hockey back then. Like, they didn't have a name for it, And my mom was like, "Who y'all playing tonight?" And we played for the Pirates. We were so good. And we played this team. I lived in a small town at that time, and there was a small town next to us. And that small town only had one team for the whole town. And that one team would just get beat down by everybody in our league. And my mom was like, "Who are you playing?" And, I said that town's name. And she's like, "Do you think y'all will win?" And I was like, "Ah, like, I just told you who we're playing. Like, everybody kills them." And I remember my mom, she's like, "Well, don't be so sure, And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And as you may have guessed, we got smoked. Like they didn't have run rules back then, you know. Now it's like after 10 mercy rule or whatever. I think they beat us by like 20-1 or something crazy. Like I'd never taken a beat down in my short life like that. And um it's so now, like, whenever maybe getting a little too prideful or something like that, I'll kind of say the name of that little town to myself, or me and my buddies will do that to each other when somebody's getting a little proud of themselves, like, oh, I got this. And we're like, hey, to protect the name of those not here, I'm not going to say the name of the town, but we'll say that name. And it's pretty humbling because you know what, like, you got to play the game, right? Like, David beat Goliath, right? Nobody bet on David. And no, nobody bet on this small team. And like the humility from that was really awesome. And I think about, I think it's really important also to look back where I could have showed up differently and more powerfully as a young man, because I just didn't know better. And I'm not looking back to judge myself or to judge other people. Like, we were doing the best we could, but to really, look at situations where I want to really recognize what I want to improve so I can lean more into it. And I think grace is so important. And it's like where people were kind to me as opposed to being right, where I was probably completely off base, where I was coming from. And because I had a way higher opinion of my skills than other people probably did, or than reality maybe had. I don't know. A lot of ego as a young Kevin. And a lot of people were really gentle with me. And I'm just really grateful that people did that for me. And hopefully I can, pay that forward now with a little more awareness around it. So that's definitely one of the big lessons is humility and grace.
Another story that you've shared with the mastermind group is, and you made it, you gave us an awareness of your prep for climbing Mount Rainier the second time. And so the first time that you went, you do you feel like you had a little bit of overconfidence that you were gonna summit and it was gonna be no big deal, and then you went into it with a little more humility the second time?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it was, because we don't have a lot of peaks to summit in Texas, so I had very little experience, but, I go out there a lot. And, man, I worked out and I followed a training plan, but I followed it, like, the way I wanted to, as opposed to the way that, the creator of the training plan wanted me to. And the creator of the training plan was a mountaineering expert, and I have pretend like I know nothing, and you're pretty accurate. And, it was super humbling because, like, I'm not used to struggling in, like, physical endeavors. Like, usually, like, especially with preparation, I can show up mm, pretty close to what I want at least. Doesn't mean I'm, winning the race necessarily, but at least not questioning if my heart's gonna explode or whatever. And I was super humbling, and I really don't like feeling like I didn't do my part because, that I was part of a team. And just I mean, it wasn't a total disaster, and there was bad weather, luckily, luckily, because we had to stop. But I mean, I think it was gonna get really bad. The wheels were definitely getting shaky, and it was awesome though, because you know what? Like, I really work on not having expectations. It's more like a preference. I prefer it worked out differently, but it's not the end of the world, right? And that allowed me not to judge myself, and I just really got intentional and, like, I'm not going through this again. It's not gonna be like this. I'm coming back because I don't like leaving things undone. I'm coming back, but I'm gonna enjoy it. And the only way I enjoy it is if I show up in, like, phenomenal shape, and, whatever my version of phenomenal is. And it was so much better the second time, and it was so much more fun, and it was so much safer too, because, like, you can get really hurt up there, especially if, you're struggling. So yeah, I think just not judging myself and not, needing myself to be a certain way to be okay was, like, what really helped me to be able to move, forward towards what I did want. Because we make this judgment like, oh, I sucked, I wasn't prepared or whatever. Like, yeah, that was true. I could have been more prepared. But you know what? Like, I needed to let it go and just, like, make a new decision. The new decision was, you know what, I can do better. And, like, that's always the goal, right? It's like, don't feel bad, just do better. Because I sit around feeling sorry for myself, like, who is that serving? So yeah, that's a great question.
And you did this with your brother.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how did he show up?
Yeah, and he was he's awesome, man. Like, I don't know if he's ever complained about much. He's just like one of those guys, like, he was in South Africa, like, he went to a silent auction for his work, and he bought this trip to South Africa, and his wife's like, "Yeah, you can go without me." And so he went with one of his buddies, and he was telling me the story. This is just to give out color and context on what kind of person my brother is, and they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna go to this other part of the park that's like, we can drive around in the truck, it'll take a few hours, or we can walk 20 miles over this mountain. We can drive or we can walk 20 miles through the heat, through the climb this mountain." He's like, "Oh, I just started walking." Like, yeah, that sounds like him, right? Like, he enjoys the hard, right? And he uh he worked really hard and he got himself ready and he did great. So I was really grateful to have him with me. He's a lot better at doing stuff with his hands than I am. Like, I'm not great at putting tents together and doing all that sort of thing. So I was really thankful, and there's just so many little things. It was just nice to have somebody that I knew without a doubt I could count on, no matter what. And he and I were on the rope team together and with our one guide, and we had more people with us, but there's only three of us on a rope team, and like, it was super comforting to know that this is the guy who's going to probably take care of me before he takes care of himself. There's like no question there, and it's the same way going the other way. Like, if he goes down, I go down, and like, no big deal. And we made it up, we made it down, and yeah, I'm really grateful we got to share that experience together. And talking to my niece last night, she just turned 11, and I was like, "Hey," everybody calls her Pocket 'cause she looks like a pocket-sized version of him, like, just like him in the face, like, uh, but he calls her, a little Kevin Kepple because he's like, "Dude, she's just like you." I was like, "Oh, you're welcome, man. How lucky are you?" And, I was like, "Do you wanna go climb Mount Rainier with us sometime?" Because she's always like, "I wanna do everything," right? She's awesome, and she's like, "Yeah, my dad said he wasn't going again." I was like, "Yeah, I bet if you do, he does." And, he'd already told me he would do it if she wanted to. He goes, "Other than that," he's like, "Don't ask." He's like, "We made it, and I'm good." But it was a really nice time, man. It was really special to get to do that with him, so super cool.
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to touch on in our conversation uh, is well, one of the things that we have been working on in the mastermind, just to share it with the group. And I'm sure that if they listen to your podcast, they'd be able to hear a lot more about it. But you know, can you talk about flow, what that is, and how uh, you implement certain tactics to improve the flow in your life?
Yeah, and, like, there's a lot of different ways people talk about flow, and when it comes to flow in our group, what, Dave's referring to and what, I'm referring to is it's more about, like, where are we creating peak experiences in our life, where those limitations fall away and we get just really phenomenal performance or maybe just really profound insights into life and just quantum leap down the road towards whatever our version of impossible or amazing is. And I think, one of the big pieces of flow or the pathway to flow, and like, you want to see more information that's said really well on this, anything Stephen Kotler does is super powerful around flow. But he talks about that full intrinsic motivational stack, and that's the components of drive. And it's like curiosity, passion, purpose, autonomy, and mastery. And Daniel Pink actually talked about this too in his book Drive, and he's got a TED talk on this. It's pretty good. But I think it's so, like, simple, but that it often gets ignored that, the step to everything we want, the first step is always curiosity. It's a question. It's like, what if, or, what does better look like? Or, what can I create? And it's so powerful though, because when I get curious, like, I instantly get access to more parts of me because we're biologically designed to be curious. And so we start getting this chemical cascade of goodness, right? We definitely get more dopamine, and that gives us more focus and just a better mood overall. And there's, like five or six other chemicals that generally show up if we're headed all the way to flow. But, like, think about anything that you've ever, gotten really driven to do. That's exactly how you did it. You got curious, and an easy one's always like a romantic relationship. Whether it's your wife or girlfriend, fiance, boyfriend, husband, whatever. At some point, you were curious. You're like, maybe what's it going to take to get this person to go away? But they kept showing up, and then the curiosity turned into passion. It's like, hey, I really like this person. I think I might love them, and then the purpose emerges, right? This purpose of like we could build a family or a life or a future or whatever. And as long as there's autonomy, which is freedom, right? Because if you restrict my freedom, then there's no autonomy and then that's control. And people try to, get away from that. But you have curiosity, passion, purpose, and autonomy stacked like that. And then mastery, that fifth piece. No, you got to get better relationships or they're not going to last. But when you think about it and you have all those things stacked, you're incredibly driven to continue to go to new levels. And like that's how you find flow. And like flow, there's so many different forms of flow. There's macro and micro, big and small and everything in between. And we get into flow in sports a lot, of course, but you can get into flow just chilling and watching a sunset. It's just having that super heightened awareness and you feel so phenomenally good in flow. And all the studies show that the happiest people on earth are the ones who have the most flow in their lives. And, it's not like, sit around in a circle and hold hands, sing Kumbaya. I mean, if that's your thing, nice. Well, knock yourself out, right? But like, who doesn't want to be happy? Because when we're happy, we just create at way higher levels. And that's the whole point is to grow as much as we can so we can give more. And that's what flow does for you. It gives you these really heightened states of performance and just a feeling of well-being. And that's where you get all this access to like just happiness and aliveness. And, like, I love the fact that I'm alive, right? That's my humanity that I'm celebrating and, celebrating that with other people. And, we can find flow together, or we can find flow as a group. And it's just such a powerful thing. But if I don't, understand it, I may hit it sometimes, right? But I'm not going to hit it consistently unless I'm aware of what it is. And so it's not like we've got to like decode where the wormholes are in the universe to figure out how to get there. There's pretty specific things we could do to get there, and that's the flow triggers. And that full intrinsic stack I just mentioned, those are all flow triggers. And like right now, Dave, you're a phenomenal listener, man. Close listening, that's a flow trigger. Puts us into flow, being together and equal participation. Like I talk, then I stop, right? I hit the ball back over the net, and you run with it, and then you hit the ball back, and that's flow. And I'm sure you've been in conversations where that's not the case. You hit the ball over the net and they catch it like a football and run off with it. You're like, hey, but like so many different wonderful ways that we can just create that flow in our lives because at all moments it's either acceptance or resistance. Those are our two choices. And resistance builds tension. And that fills up your cup with things you don't want, like stress and anger. And then you bump against somebody or something and you spill all over them and bad things follow.
I'm interested in learning what led you to really dig in to studying flow, to really making it such a big part of who you are and what you teach.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I've thought about that a lot. I mean, why am I so fascinated with just really heightened levels of performance? And, one of the best ways I found to get answers into the inner workings of me or other people is with strength finders. And, we talk about that all the time in our group. And I've been certified by Gallup for years with that. And I've worked with thousands of people with this tool. And my number one strengths maximizer. And it's like fascinated with, just excellence and elite levels of performance. And like I love to read biographies, right? Like how do they do it? And like one of the, you know, common things I've seen in myself and other people is like those states where we get peak experiences where things are just like happening so effortlessly. And it's like this is the way it's supposed to be. When you feel like that, like it feels like you're literally unlimited because you're like tapped into that infinite ultimate part of you, the level 10 part of you, like that's some cool stuff. And, quite frankly, like I love to go further faster and flow's like the doorway to that. And anything I can find that helps me be better, faster, smarter, or helps, the people around me really step into the gifts that, God bless them with, like I'm all about. And I think flow is absolutely the best pathway to not just get elite performance, but just to get the most, again, happiness and aliveness you can possibly find. And it's like statistically proven. And if there's a specific, set of things that I can do or not do to make that conducive, like it's like a no brainer. Like, why wouldn't I want to learn more about that? And, like really just being intentional about staying present because I don't have all the answers by any means. But you know what? I'm open to learning more every day. And I think just continually, like, okay, based on what I know today, like, what do I see in this? And, that's why, like, going back and reading the same thing again is never a waste of time because I'm a new version of me. Right. And like I love doing that. And flow is just such a fascinating thing to study because it makes you better, like kind of across the board in your impact in your life, and just really cool way to move towards your goals.
I just recommended so the book that you recommended to the group, The Art of Impossible by Stephen Kotler, I just recommended it to a buddy of mine, he's a major in the Air Force, and just he's an amazing human being. He was one of the people that helped me develop the leadership program that I built for the fire department I retired from. He's always like trying to raise the bar for himself and his team, and it was just like really cool to have this conversation with him the other day, where I shared the book and I was telling him all about it, and it was like almost like I got into this state of flow of sharing with him, and I sold it like I should get a commission.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if you can think of a time in your life where either you were coaching somebody to, achieve this high state of flow, or if you were, um, intentionally implementing these principles to get yourself in this state of flow. And can you describe that experience and maybe what the driving force was for you?
Yeah. So, man, I think one of the ways that I'm always looking for flow, and this may not be super sexy or exciting, but is whenever I'm reading. Like, I love to read because I feel like books are the cheat codes to the universe, right? Like, I get somebody's genius distilled down to a couple hundred pages. And like, there's so many books, though, that I want to read, like, and so little time, so to speak. And so that's one of the ways to be into flow and reading is with speed reading, and it's a trainable skill. Like, it's not either something you have or don't. It's something you've learned how to do or not do. And I think that flow is conducive to flow. And what I mean by that is, so before I'll get on the phone one on one with somebody or on a Zoom or whatever, or before I jump into the mastermind group, whether it's doing a little bit of speed reading just to like get the flowy feeling going, like, because if I'm already there, it's much easier for me to stay there. So when I drop into a call or drop into the group, if I'm already like feel like I'm kind of in that place, it's so much easier for me just to be super present and right there. And like every day I practice stillness, and I wake up and just get really still, whether I'm meditating, doing breathing exercises or writing or whatever. But I think the more familiar it is to me, and the more different ways I can find it, the easier it is to find. And so I'm just really intentional. Like, we generally get what we're looking for. And so if I'm focused on it, that, intentionally, what I focused on, I'm naturally going to create more of. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I'm always kind of looking for it, was the short answer of what I just said.
One thing that has occurred to me, and I don't know if you've found the same thing, um, but I feel like it's so much easier to get in that state if the the driving force is adding value to somebody else.
Yeah, I think that's one of the requirements. It has to have inherent value. You have to have something you want to, be in flow, and there has to have an inherent value. And so with reading, like, that's one of the ways I get really motivated to read, because I know when I read, I become a better version of me, and I'm able to help people at a higher level. Like, and so how am I connecting the purpose to what I do? And that's why, like, you've heard me say these two questions so many times, like, what do you want and why do you want it? Like, those two questions. Like, if you don't get anything else out of today, just ask yourself that. What do I want? And why? Because what do you want? What are you passionate about creating in your life right now? And then, like, how are you mixing generosity into it? That's your why, right? That's the purpose. And it's like, cool, man. I want to learn more so I can help people more. Like, period. Okay, cool. And like, when you kind of do that, you give yourself a goal or a purpose outside of yourself. And that's really good, because if I'm thinking about what everything means to me, that really takes me out of the present moment. And the only place I find flow is in the present moment. I can't find it if I'm stuck in the past thinking about what's already happened. Like, yeah, I need to learn from the past, right? I reflect and get experience from the experience, but then come back to the present moment. So if we stay there, we get guilt and depression. And I know one of your like top strengths is context, which is awesome because that's really rare. Like it's like statistically the least likely, along with command, to see up there, which you also have. So you're a unicorn, but we all knew that, right? Which context is awesome because you guys are so good at just building meaning in the moment, right? And that's great as long as I don't say stuck in the past. Or like me, I have futuristic really high on strength finders, and so casting a vision of what could be is really like natural and second nature. But if I stay stuck in the future, it creates anxiety because like I can't do anything about tomorrow. Like today, I can be more prepared. But it's so important just learn to let go and allowing. Like that's the solution to pretty much everything that ails us. Because at least according to the Buddha, right, all suffering comes from wanting things to be different than they actually are. And it's like this argument with the present moment, and that's like that time tripping.
It's funny that you should. No kidding. I was just reading a list of quotes that I had posted on January 1st this year. I posted several quotes, and there was a couple that I didn't publish, but one of the ones that I had on that list was what you just said by the Buddha. All suffering stems from wanting things to be different than what they are right now. And um, I mean, how true is that? Like, good God.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, because I mean, think about anytime you've been unhappy. It's because you didn't have something you think you wanted. Or maybe you did
Thank
have
you.
something you think you didn't want.
Yeah. When you're examining your life and what you're most passionate about, well, what is it that you're most passionate about?
Man, that's a great question. And I feel like if you can't explain something simply, then you don't understand. And so let's see how simple I can make this. I'm really passionate about finding the love. And what I mean by that, one of my clients, shout out Josh. Josh is an awesome CEO I get to work with, and I work with like his awesome team. He's got all these great leaders around him. And he's like, before we started working together, like 3 years ago, he's like, man, if you come in talking all this love stuff, they're not gonna get it. I was like, dude, who doesn't want more love in their life? What are you talking about? Like, but we're men and we don't talk about that, right? No, but what I mean, like I feel like every action we've ever taken, if you kind of reverse engineer it all the way to the essence or the core, it's either fear or love that's kind of driving it. Fear can wear all those hats like anger, guilt, shame, remorse, apathy, pride, whatever. But love is love, unconditional love, not romantic love necessarily. And it's like, where's the love at? Somebody's showing up sideways, some other, let's say, driver, right? Like waves at you with that one finger that nobody likes to be waved at with, and you get all sideways about it, like you're finding the fear, but you're not finding the love. It's like, you know what? Like if I truly love myself, how would I allow myself to react to this? I wouldn't react. I would create. You know what? And I don't ever want to create, more pain, more fear. And I'd love to say that, like every time I've been in a situation like that, I showed up as, pure love as I wanted to, but I didn't. But you know what? Like I can do better. And it's through awareness, because I feel like awareness and ego are incompatible, because ego's in unawareness, right? It's an unaware behavior. And like as long as I'm aware, I'm headed in the right direction. And so I was like, where's the love at? And when it comes to strength finders, man, this is such a great tool because it's like our natural superpowers. And we own that power when we create from love, and we give away that power when we react from fear. And it's so simple, but that doesn't always mean easy, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to actually mention that to the listeners. If you have never heard of Gallup Strength Finders, um, Kevin introduced that to me. You can go on their website, do their evaluation. It's like $50 to get the really good one, and it gives you all of these insights. But there's 34 strengths that we all have, and it's in what order or what level they are for us. And the idea is that you figure out your top five strengths and you work on making them even better. And then you start working on your top 10 and making them even better, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure if you've listened to this show enough, you'll have heard so many experts and high performers stress the importance of having a coach. And that's where, Kevin comes in, helping me understand my strengths and how to make them better. And really the team atmosphere in the mastermind is freaking phenomenal. The group that you've put together, I mean, I just am so grateful to you and the people in that mastermind. Um, I can't speak highly enough of everybody, and how much I've learned from everybody in there. It's freaking phenomenal.
Yeah, well, like attracts like, it's like-minded people on like-minded journeys, and so, I mean, you fit right in. Everybody there are just such different brilliant examples of servant leaders, and it's really, really cool. And, just for confusion's sake, Strength Finders is created by Gallup, and they rebranded it, like, 2 years ago. It's now called Clifton Strengths Assessment, so if you Google that, like, that's how you'll get there to the assessment. Like, that's confusing, but it's still the same assessment. They've given it like 33 million times. And it's not like Myers-Briggs is more of a complete portrait of your character. This is like, hey, here's your natural talents. And like Dave said, there's always the same 34, just a different order. And that's not rare. Talent's not rare. But like, with regards to owning your superpowers or owning your genius, it's got so much more to do with habits. It's get into the habit of being your version of, elite. And that's choosing fear over love as a habit. And what's rare is people who've developed these into strengths, or superpowers they can use on demand. And it's not a one-time event. Like I've worked with thousands of people with this tool, and I've been certified for like, gosh, I don't know, years from Gallup, and I still learn more every single time I go back to it because it looks different in everybody. There's like a 1 in 20 something million chance that you'd have the same top five in the same order as another person. And even if you did, you'd have the next 6 or 10 are going to be different. And so we all know that we're different, but this is such a granular look at it. And it's such a great tool when you're working with other people because it's basically a cheat sheet into the way that people see the world. Like with Dave, Dave's number one strength is activator. And activator is really high for me too. And people with activator, it's like ready, fire, aim. We don't need a lot of information to get started. We're just going to jump off the cliff. We'll build our wings on the way down, like Johnny Carson said, right? And it's not that we don't need instruction. We just think better when we're in action. And, my brother, that makes his head explode. He's like, whoa, pump the brakes, because deliberative is his number one strength. And that means like I don't make mistakes because I assess every risk before I take action. But because of that, he's phenomenal at executing when he starts. And it's just so nice to give yourself permission to be you with this assessment, like instead of looking at other people and feeling bad about what you can't do. It's really, just celebrating you.
And when you first found the strengths assessment, the strength finders, and started working with somebody on learning more about you and your strengths, how did that shape your daily routine? And if you were to look back on how you were and how you are now, how has that knowledge helped you develop a better daily routine and develop your goals to achieve more?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I think what I did is what a lot of people do when they first take it. They're like, get it, they look at the report and like, yeah, whatever. It doesn't say you're the most amazing person in the world or something like that. Just throw it on the shelf, right? And my coach at the time was like, hey, man, like if this is like, a cheat sheet more or less to your greatest gifts, don't you think we should at least maybe study it a little bit? I'm like, yeah, I guess. And, I got it off the shelf and blew the dust off and just started really understanding what I was and what, more importantly, that I wasn't supposed to be these things that I wasn't good at and that I felt bad about that I wasn't good at, like being super patient and methodical about things. I think better, like, I just talked about when I'm moving and like that. It's not better or worse. It's just my style. And I used to, I think one of the biggest things that helped me improve, my number two strength on the assessment is positivity. And when I took this, I worked in financial services uh, and everybody's not like all, super excited about life, like somebody with positivity necessarily. It's not like doom and gloom by any means, but I just felt like I wasn't like everybody else. And so I would turn down positivity so I could be more like everybody else. Like, cause I was comparing myself to other people, which is super dangerous because we feel inferior or superior, right? And then I took this and I realized how much of a strength positivity really is. It doesn't mean I'm, sliding down a rainbow on the way to work at the unicorn ranch every day, right? Like I'm petting a puppy, but it means I have the ability to find the good in things. I have the energy to get things started, to keep them going. And, preaching to the choir, Dave has positivity at number 7. And it's just a very insatiable desire to find what's working and how we can step into that more and more importantly maybe to help other people do the same because it takes a lot of energy to break inertia or to keep going in the plateaus, and people with positivity are phenomenal at that.
There's another question that I've had for a while, and I don't know why I haven't asked you before now, but what led you to start recording your podcast?
I really wanted to get better at saying what I was trying to say, and I know, like, we always get better with every iteration of whatever we're doing pretty generally, right? But, especially as a maximizer, I was really looking for a container where I could create a really conducive environment for deliberate practice, because that's how, we really, without getting too technical, grow the interior parts of, our brain, our body, our habits, or whatever, is by setting up a place where you can grow and you can learn, you can get, feedback of some sort. And I knew that if I was putting this thing out to the world that I would, you know, I'm not gonna just mail it in. Like, I'm gonna work hard at showing up, and I also really wanted to connect with more people. Like, I'm an extrovert, but I feel like I have introvert tendencies. Like, I really like being alone too, like, I feel like I'm an HSP, which is like highly sensitive person. And so like big crowds, lots of light noise, like it just drains me of energy pretty quick. And like I love people, but also love to, just be solo. And so left alone, one of my friends one time, he's like, dude, you gotta be careful. You're gonna be like a recluse if you're not careful. And after I got done like looking up the word to see what it meant, right? I was like, well, what's wrong with living in a cave alone? That sounds awesome. And so I just think it's so important to really intentionally seek out connection. And that was a big driver. I wanted to connect with other people because I wanted to learn from them. And I just wanted to, share humanity and, like, meet people like you. And I think it's so phenomenal that we have this ability, and hopefully it helps somebody, that's out there that's hearing what needs to be heard. And I know I've got one big fan. Shout out to my mom. Thanks for listening, mom. Love you. She's always like, man, I like your podcast. I know what you're talking about most of the time. And I was just like, man, you're so cool, mom. Moms are the best, wouldn't be here without you.
Uh, what would you attribute the success of your show to?
Man, I think just continually showing up and the great folks that I've been lucky enough to have come through. It's co-creation. And the first time I did it was definitely the worst, right? Like, first is usually the worst. Like the first time we rode a bike, we probably crashed. And I mean, it wasn't a total train wreck, but if I went back and listened now, I'd probably like nails on a chalkboard a little bit. But I really look to people who are doing well and to see what they're doing that, I could be doing based on my gifts, but also at the same time still really working to create from my uniqueness. And I think probably the biggest thing that we could all do in anything you're doing is to detach from the outcome, right? Like not needing myself to be a certain way to be okay, not needing a certain amount of downloads to be okay. And it takes courage to create, period. I mean, whether you're drawing a picture, writing a letter, creating a podcast, like, because you're stepping out in the unknown. But every time you do that, you prove to yourself that you're creative, and creativity is an action, and like creativity is a choice. And so I think just continually showing up and, just working to be better without expectation.
For those listening that want to check out your podcast, what would be a really good interview for them to get a taste of what what your show is all about?
Yeah. We'll go wherever you like to listen to podcasts. It's on places I've never even heard of, actually. All kinds of platforms, but definitely Spotify and Apple Podcast and like 10 others, I think. And I would search the one with Dave Hollenbach because it was a pretty favorite episode of mine. Really, I just read through the titles because I don't usually put a lot of them are interviews. I have some solos on there, but just go through the titles and see if any of them stand out to you. Dave's was amazing. There's a great one. I interviewed somebody. She's gosh done just humanitarian work all over the world, and recently, and it was about choosing love over fear. And I really, really just liked hearing such a completely different background and experience and the humility coming through. But just so many great people that I've gotten to meet. I released one. I think it came out today. There's a solo episode on limiting beliefs. I mean, start with that because like we all have beliefs. They're either serving us or sabotaging us. And when you learn to identify the things that are holding you back, that's how you begin to move through it. And so, yeah, I mean, it's like pick a favorite kid. Yeah. So thanks for highlighting that. I really appreciate it. I've just been really blessed to have some great people like you come through.
I've been working on my show for a while now, and I am just teetering on the cusp of going from the top 10% into the top five. And I know I had the score to be in the top 5%, but I don't know what happened. It like went back. And I'm like, dang, man, I was right there. It'll come. It's just a matter of time, and uh, getting people like you. Uh, Actually, I really have no idea what the formula is. I know that what I've been doing has been helping some people, and that's good enough for me. I don't need to be in the top 5%. I do like the idea of um, I always want to achieve more, and so that's what I'm chasing. I don't know what I got to do different, but as I look at my first interviews to now, the the quality is so much better. I feel it takes that level of comfort in your own skin and being able to connect with the person on the other side, and being able to talk with people like you is freaking awesome. Like, to really have that genuine interest in what the other person has to say is so cool. So
Yeah.
um,
Well, shout out to you, by the way. Like, I don't really study my stats a whole lot, but I go back and look just to see like if there's any patterns that I can learn from. And yours is one of the most downloaded over the past year. So people have been all over it. So whatever you're doing is working, it's I have no idea how the algorithm works. Like, because sometimes like it's like, all right, where all these people come from? And so I was like, where do they all go? Somebody shut the door. Like, open the
yeah,
door back up. So well, who knows? But and they really liked what you did. So thanks for that.
that's cool. Yeah, that's interesting. Um,
Well, they have good taste. We know that much, right? So
um, well, before we go, I mean, we touched on a lot of different things, and I'm wondering, is there anything that we didn't touch on that you feel is important for us to talk about before we go?
man, I think it was really great. If you guys had checked out Dave's book, Fireproof, we could have touched on that, man. It's a pretty phenomenal book. And I think I just think what you're doing is great. And I love how you serve. And I'm grateful that I get to work with people like you. So I think you do a really good job of being kind as opposed to trying to be right. And I think we could all but the more we're kind as opposed to right, the better it is for everybody, whether we're like being kind to ourselves, being kind to other people. But man, the kind people in my lives are the ones that I can't get enough of. And, it's like the people who are right all the time. It's like, I already think I've had enough. But, we love you all, but, just kind more than right. And, I think it's a really good way to move through life. So thanks for being you, man.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And for those listening, the best place to connect with you, I would imagine your podcast or your website, kevinkepple.us. Is that
Yeah, it's a great place, man. Any social media you like to go on, like Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever. Happy to answer any questions or always like new friends. So hopefully something that we shared was helpful today for you guys.
Yeah, definitely check out Kevin's website because not only do you have your podcast on there, you can check out his podcast on his website, but you've got all your links to your social media there. You can book a call with you. Definitely, if you're in the market for an amazing coach, um, check out him. And once I'm doing a little better from learning from Kevin, you can check me out too.
Yeah, man, I'd be all over Dave if I was you guys, man. He's a powerful guy and he's just got a great heart and a big brain. So
But
good
I
guy.
no, really, like I feel like we're doing the self-licking ice cream cone right now, but uh no, man, like I have learned so much from being in your group, and I can't endorse you enough. Uh People that want to achieve more should definitely check out your website and know that you downplay a lot of your abilities. So the people that you've worked with, I mean, I'm just fortunate enough to have connected with you when I did, and thank you so much, Kevin. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm better for it. So grateful for you too.
All right, brother. Well, thanks a lot, man, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to this episode of From Embers to Excellence. Please visit hollenbachleadership.com for additional content, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review.